The computer game that had been paused suddenly started running on its own. With no one at the controls, the game character mechanically launched attacks. Before Jack could make sense of what was happening, his colleague's call came through abruptly. In a frantic tone, he told Jack a horrific massacre had just taken place. Coincidentally, the moment the call ended, all enemies in the game were instantly eliminated. This eerie synchronization sent a chill down Jack's spine. He immediately dialed his colleague Nick's video call, eager to check the scene. As soon as the video connected, Jack carefully compared the crime scene in the video with the game screen, and the result made his blood run cold. The two scenes were identical. Shocked, Jack instinctively waved his hand at the computer. To his astonishment, the game character, as if gaining life, responded to his movement with pinpoint accuracy. Little did he know, the bizarre origin of all this traced back to an hour earlier. It was Jack's birthday. His girlfriend, Anna, had given him a loaded shotgun as a gift, filling him with excitement. While he was messing around with the shotgun, his phone rang. He casually slipped a bullet into his pocket and got up to answer. The door outside was an anonymous package containing a game disc he'd never seen before. As a diehard gamer, Jack assumed it was a birthday surprise from a friend and couldn't wait to fire up the game. Though the game's graphics were quite ordinary, its smooth combat feel hooked Jack instantly, making him completely ignore his girlfriend, who was constantly seeking his attention. Anna's advances were repeatedly brushed off, and she finally couldn't bear it any longer. She slammed the door and left. With his girlfriend gone, Jack had no more inhibitions and played even more unrestrainedly. It wasn't until Nick called that he suddenly remembered he had work to do today. Reluctantly, Jack paused the game and prepared to go out, only to find that Anna had already taken the keys and locked the door from the outside, obviously punishing him for the earlier snub. And that's when the bizarre scene from the beginning unfolded quietly. Trapped at home, Jack tried to comfort himself, guessing to Nick over the video if someone was filming a movie. But before Nick could respond, a change on the game interface gave him the answer. This discovery left Jack both shocked and suddenly enlightened. He hurriedly asked Nick to inquire about the culprit's appearance at the scene. Just then, reporters behind Nick were interviewing a survivor who said they hadn't seen the culprit's face clearly, only that the person was wearing yellow pants and wielding a giant machete. And these features perfectly matched the game character. Jack finally confirmed it. The game's content was synchronizing to the real world. He rushed to tell Nick this astonishing finding, but Nick dismissed it as a hallucination from Jack's excessive gaming, refusing to believe such a ridiculous claim. As they argued, a policeman approached to disperse onlookers. Jack quickly stopped the officer and recounted the entire story, but the police also found it incredible. Just as the policeman was about to turn away, he suddenly sensed something was wrong and asked Nick, "How do you know what the culprit looks like?" Nick hurried to explain he'd heard it from the survivor interviewed by reporters, but the policeman clearly stated there were no survivors at the scene, and the ambulance parked nearby earlier had long since disappeared. For this reason, Nick was listed as a key suspect and taken away for questioning on the spot. Watching Nick wrongfully arrested because of him, Jack was burning with anxiety. He didn't notice the game interface changing again. In reality, a mysterious car was quietly tailing the police car transporting Nick. By the time Jack spotted it, danger had already arrived. The mysterious car suddenly accelerated, overtook the police car from the side, and crashed into it violently. The police car lost control instantly and slammed into the roadside guardrail. Immediately afterward, a group of thugs rushed out in the game, and in reality, the same group of armed thugs surrounded the police car, encircling it completely. Jack watched helplessly as Nick was abducted by the thugs, frantically operating the computer to stop it. But no matter how hard he pressed the keys, he couldn't change the game's plot. He could only watch the tragedy unfold. After an unknown amount of time, Nick regained consciousness and found himself tied to a chair covered in nails and gears. At that moment, a mysterious man wearing yellow pants stepped forward and pressed the switch on a nearby camera. Meanwhile, Jack's game interface updated again, displaying, "You will participate in an interactive game with Jack. The result will directly determine Nick's life or death." Before Jack could react, the screen switched to two opposing characters. He tried to quit the game, but found it impossible. He was forced to participate. What was even more terrifying, every time the character he controlled took damage, Nick, tied to the mechanism, suffered the exact same harm. Jack's amazing hand speed, honed from years of gaming, allowed him to gradually gain the upper hand. Just as he was about to reduce the opponent's health to a sliver, the game suddenly paused. Through the camera, the mysterious man made a request, an additional interactive session before the game ended. If Jack answered a question correctly, he would win. If he got it wrong, Nick would be deemed a loser immediately. The question was, when Nick had just started working, he was short on money. Jack kindly helped him find a cheap apartment, one that actually belonged to Jack's grandmother. Jack had intended to make money off his friend, and later, when Nick couldn't pay the rent on time, Jack even hired thugs to threaten him. Now, Jack needed to say how many days Nick had lived in that apartment. Jack never expected the man to know this secret. The ticking of the countdown urged him on, but he couldn't remember the exact number of days, no matter how hard he tried. As the countdown hit 0, the game character's health bar emptied instantly, and Nick gradually lost his vital signs, as the gears turned. Still clinging to a glimmer of hope, Jack tried to throw the computer away to stop everything, but the next second, his phone received a message containing a photo of Nick's tragic death. Before his grief could fade, the computer let out a shrill hum. He had to open the screen again, only to see that the game would continue, with his parents as the next target. Jack finally calmed down and immediately called the police. But when the operator heard, "The murderer is a game," they thought he was playing a prank, issued a stern warning, and hung up. At that moment, Jack's parents were dining at a restaurant, completely unaware of the approaching danger. The game interface synchronized the restaurant's live feed in real time. Jack hurriedly called his father, but his father dismissed it as nonsense and refused to believe him. Jack tried to talk to his mother instead, but his father snatched the phone and scolded him fiercely. Helpless, Jack could only call the restaurant's front desk, anxiously telling the staff the two elderly people dining there were in great danger, and someone wearing yellow pants must be nearby. But the waiter also didn't believe him and hung up immediately. However, out of caution, they informed Jack's parents about the call. Angered, Jack's father called back and shouted at him again. Watching the approaching countdown on the game and the thugs driving toward the restaurant, Jack panicked completely. He turned and ran for the door, but the locked door trapped him. In his desperation, Jack noticed the delivery driver's call log from that morning. All the bizarre incidents had started with that anonymous game disc. He immediately called back to ask about the package's origin, but the delivery driver knew nothing. Jack could only beg the driver to help save his parents. To convince him, he sent the photo of Nick's death and even transferred all his savings to the driver. After receiving the money, the driver finally agreed to help, but only promised to inform the police of the restaurant's address. Jack breathed a sigh of relief until he suddenly realized something was wrong. He had never told the driver where his parents were. So how did the driver know the restaurant's address? He hurriedly questioned the driver, but the call was ruthlessly hung up again. By this time, the thugs had already arrived at the restaurant's entrance. Desperate, Jack called the restaurant's front desk again, but only a gunshot came from the other end before the signal went dead completely. Soon after, the game screen showed that his parents had also been kidnapped. The mysterious man in yellow pants appeared again and turned on the camera. This time, he forced Jack to make a choice between his parents. Iron chains were tied around both of his parents' necks. Whichever the game's pointer selected would be hanged. Before Jack could resist, the game started. The pointer first pointed to his father, and the chain slowly tightened, lifting his father into the air. Jack frantically moved the pointer to his mother, but the chain around her neck also tightened. He could only toggle the pointer back and forth between them, hoping to reduce the harm, unaware that the mechanism wasn't one up, one down. If this continued, both his parents would die. The immense pressure drove Jack to the brink of collapse. He slammed the computer to the ground. This time, the computer didn't emit a hum. Jack carefully lifted the screen, only to discover he hadn't found a way to break the game. Instead, the game had triggered another interactive session. If he revealed a secret he'd kept from his parents that he felt guilty about, both of them would be rescued simultaneously. The chains started moving again. After hesitating for a long time, Jack finally spoke about the past he'd buried in his heart. On the day his grandmother passed away, his parents had asked him to look after her, but he was obsessed with gaming at the time. He lied and said he was working, refusing their request. That day, his grandmother suffered a sudden heart attack and died because she didn't receive timely medical treatment. This confession passed the game's test. The mechanism stopped, and his parents were lowered from the chains, but they would never hear Jack's apology. The secret had been revealed too late. Before Jack could recover from the grief of losing his parents, the game interface updated again. The next target was none other than his girlfriend Anna, and a 30-minute countdown began. At this point, Anna had already arrived at work, unaware that the mysterious man in yellow pants had been following her for a long time. Jack anxiously called Anna repeatedly, but she was still angry about being snubbed on his birthday and refused to answer. With no other options, Jack ran to the window and shouted Anna's name toward the street below, hoping someone would pass on the message. Finally, a pedestrian noticed him, but upon learning Jack was trapped at home, they only suggested he call the fire department and walked away. Jack immediately dialed the fire department, but they said it would take half an hour to arrive, and the game's countdown also had only 30 minutes left. There was no time to wait. He hurried to contact a locksmith, who arrived at the door quickly but insisted on being paid first before unlocking it. Jack was about to transfer the money when he remembered he'd already sent all his savings to the delivery driver. He could only beg the locksmith to unlock the door first, but once the locksmith learned he had no money, he turned around and left. A series of setbacks left Jack angry and helpless. He could only stare at the game screen again, which showed Anna had started working. Jack quickly called Anna's company and finally got through to her. He didn't have time to explain much, only urging Anna to come home immediately, telling her she was in great danger. Despite being full of doubts, Anna listened to Jack and got up to leave the office. But right after the call ended, the game screen suddenly updated. The mysterious man in yellow pants had disguised himself as a taxi driver, and Anna had just gotten into his car. Scared out of his wits, Jack called Anna again, screaming at her to get out of the car immediately and telling her the driver was the dangerous man. Fortunately, the car had just stopped at a red light. Without thinking twice, Anna pushed open the door and ran for her life. The driver chased after her immediately. Anna ran back to Jack's house as fast as she could. Before she could catch her breath, there was a knock at the door. Through the peephole, Jack saw someone in a fireman's uniform and told them to leave without hesitation, but the person said they were there to check on his safety. Jack believed them and opened the door, but the people who rushed in weren't firemen at all, but 4 or 5 armed men. Jack and Anna were taken hostage on the spot. The thugs said the game would continue. Everyone in the house would compete in the game, and the winner could take Anna away. Jack didn't have time to think. He jumped into the game immediately. With his skilled operations and quick reflexes, he soon climbed to the top of the scoreboard. But just then, his screen suddenly locked. While the other thugs' screens remained intact, his ranking plummeted instantly. It turned out this was a level designed specifically for him. To unlock the screen, he had to reveal a secret he felt guilty about keeping from Anna. She had actually been pregnant a long time ago, but Jack, not wanting her to resign and stop supporting him financially, had secretly given her medicine to make her miscarry. Anna's words left the room in dead silence, but Jack's screen still didn't unlock. Apparently, he needed Anna's forgiveness. With tears in his eyes, Jack begged Anna to put aside their grievances until they were out of danger. Looking at their current situation, Anna had no choice but to forgive him. Once the screen unlocked, Jack threw himself into the game wholeheartedly, but no matter how hard he tried, he still lost to the first place winner in the end. Seeing this, the thugs immediately stood up and walked toward Anna. Jack tried to stop them, but was shot and fell to the ground. He was then taken to a secret room by the thugs, where the mastermind behind everything stood before him. Jack was filled with confusion. He had never met this person before, so why go to such great lengths to destroy his life? Just as Jack was perplexed, the door to the secret room suddenly opened. To his shock, he saw Nick, his parents, all safe and sound. It turned out they had known all of Jack's secrets for a long time, but couldn't bear to watch him sink deeper and deeper. Anna had accidentally discovered a mysterious organization that helped people reform, so she teamed up with everyone else to plan this real-life game. All the massacres and kidnappings were fake. The props and bullets used were all simulated. The goal was to force Jack to reveal his hidden secrets and face his mistakes head-on. Just as everyone thought the crisis was over and all was well, no one noticed that Jack's eyes had turned crazy. He slowly pulled out the bullet he'd casually slipped into his pocket that morning, the real bullet that had come with the shotgun Anna gave him. Jack loaded the bullet into the shotgun, aimed at the person who had planned everything, and then a gunshot shattered the silence. Do you know who fell in the end?